They ask you to put your phone on silent if and where convenient. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley.
Members of the press, and certainly those who are listening and viewing via various platforms. I know that we are on radio, we're also streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube and via the NTV page. So I say good morning to everyone and thank you for being here at what is the November edition, but also the final press conference for this year. I apologize for that, but certainly in December we have budget meetings when we would be able to update. So I'm hopeful that the press will be paying attention to the budget debates here in Nevis and those in St. Kitts as well. So thank you very much for being here at our press conference this month. I'm very happy that another year, 2023, we've been able to keep our commitment to have press conferences on a monthly basis. And I want to thank the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Wakely Daniel, who's been here with me for most of those. I think he missed one or two due to either vacation or travel, but he has certainly been here with me, and so I'm truly grateful. And grateful to you, the members of the press, and to NTV for covering this all year through. I always start with some congratulations, and so let me start by congratulating the Cicely Brown Integrated School. They were awarded the first place in the Federation, the entire Federation, for the Taiwanese Primary School Recycling Competition. Second place went to the VO-Gen Primary School. So two schools in Nevis did incredibly well. Let me also announce that Mr. Kevin Barrett, our former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Education, has been transferred to the Ministry of Human Resources, Department of Human Resources, I'm sorry, as the Permanent Secretary there. And Mr. Barrett is to be replaced by a very dynamic young woman called Zanella Claxton. Zanella has been acting as the Principal Education Officer in the Ministry of Tourism, in the Ministry of Education, forgive me, for some time. She has now been elevated to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. I wanted to make those announcements and to thank Mr. Barrett for his excellent tenure in education, and I expect that he will continue at Human Resources to bring that expertise and that calmness of spirit. He's one of the calmest persons I know to that role. And so I want to also wish, of course, young Zanella Claxton all the very best. I think that those who know her know that she's a phenomenal talent. And so I'm very happy to make that announcement. We talk about women, we talk about youth. This government is demonstrating the empowerment of women and the empowerment of young people. And so Zanella is going to take the helm. I think these appointments take effect on the 1st of December. And so I wish both dedicated public servants all the very best. There was an investiture ceremony held at Government House, I think just yesterday. In fact, the 21st and the 22nd, so 2 days. And the following persons were presented with medals. The Star of Merit, Mr. Danny Arthurton, for Agriculture, Farming, and Small Business Development, and in Nursing, Miss Ima Stanley. And then the Medal of Honor, Mr. Joseph Liebert for Law Enforcement, and Mrs. Janetta Morgan for Education. I want to congratulate these four Nevisians. Of course, there were others as well from our sister island of St. Kitts, and I congratulate them as well. But it is the Premier's press conference, and I'm the Premier of Nevis, so I always single out those from Nevis for special commendation. So Mr. Daniel Arthurton, Star of Merit, Nurse Ima Stanley, Star of Merit, and Medal of Honor, Mr. Joseph Liebert and Mrs. Janetta Morgan. I know them all. I wish them all well. They've all served incredibly well. And so we say thank you to them, and thank you to the government for recognizing them in the way that it has done. I'm asked to alert the general public that the Premier's Ministry is currently accepting work permit and residency applications for 2024. Those who are outstanding, meaning that those who are here and operating and working illegally in the country, you are asked please to come in to the Premier's Ministry and to regularize your position. I have from this rostrum time and time again encouraged our non-national community to ensure that they are within the law and that they are in good standing. The Premier's ministry has always been prepared to accommodate and to work with people. But for those who persist in being here illegally and working illegally, you have no one to blame but yourselves if immigration were to come and knock on your door. And so I continue to invite people to do the right thing. Oftentimes, in our experience, people are here legally 4 and 5 years, and when they need something, they need to travel or something, they then rush in and start to say, Lord, 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 Lord. I need our people to be responsible. We welcome our non-nationals, we welcome their contribution, but we also insist that they must abide by the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so those who are here on work permit and on residency, we are currently accepting applications, whether new or if you are renewing, you can come into the Premier's ministry now and do that for 2024. If you are here and your status is illegal, you're out of status, you are irregular, then we're asking you please to come in and regularize your position. Some people are saying they're afraid to come in. There's no need to be afraid. This government has demonstrated a willingness and a capacity to work with everyone. So please come in, regularize your position. If you need a payment plan, come in and talk to us. We are prepared to work with you, but we need our people here on the island to be within the law, not outside the law. Let me commend the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Drew. He led a recent delegation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as part of the summit that was convened between CARICOM and Saudi Arabia. And he called me and he asked me to suggest to him someone from the island of Nevis that could accompany him and his delegation. And part of the reason that he went was to present our geothermal project to the Saudi government with the hope that we can secure funding for that project to bring that project to completion. And so I want to thank P.S. Daniel for making that trip. He has been a model public servant, always willing to do what he's asked to do for the benefit of the island, and I'm truly grateful to him. I record my gratitude, Mr. Daniel, to you, and for you to make that trip. I recall it was on short notice that I called you, and you nevertheless took on that responsibility, and by all accounts, acquitted yourself very well in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So, I commend Dr. Drew for including Nevis in that trip, and I commend P.S. Daniel for making that trip and for representing us. We like to say diplomacy matters, and so we hope that that continues and that we can extract some benefits from this new relationship with Saudi Arabia. I feel particularly good because it was under my tenure as foreign minister that we initiated diplomatic relations and formalized relations with Saudi Arabia. So this now is a natural progression, and I'm quite happy about that. Let me go to the Ministry of Education. We want to extend congratulations to some 13 individuals who are either citizens or residents right here in Nevis, who graduated the University of the West Indies through the UE Global Campus, Nevis. They took part in a virtual graduation ceremony on November 11th, which was streamed at the conference room of the Royal St. Kitts Hotel. And by all accounts, it was one of the most viewed events because it appears from the comments I saw all over social media that a lot of Nevisians and Kittitians were logged on looking at this graduation. So kudos to them all. The graduates were the following: Hadai Bifat, she got a BSc in Management Studies. Idona Brown, BSc in Management Studies. Sylvia Dorr, my cousin, BSc in Management Studies, Human Resources. Aparicia George, my very good friend, BSc in International Management. Now there's a name here, and he's going to be upset with me, but I actually don't know how to pronounce it. It's Ddlen Griffin, BSc in Accounting. Mr. Griffin, BSc in Accounting. Kyle Liebert, BSc in Youth Development. Udona Liebert, Brownhill Stock, BSc in Social Work. Chandravatya Muniram, BSc in Accounting. Suan Collins, BSc in Tourism and Hospitality Management. Disil Hamilton, BSc in Tourism and Hospitality Management. James Galloway, Bachelor of Education, Literacy Studies. Rochelle Paris, BSc in Management Studies. And Cleticia Daniel, who got her MSc in Management Studies with distinction. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important for me to make this note that of all of these graduates, 13, we have Cleticia Daniel, who got her master's with distinction. We have Mr. James Galloway, who got his bachelor's with a first-class honors degree. Mr. Disil Hamilton, who got his bachelor's with a first-class honors degree. Miss Suan Collins, who got her bachelor's with a first-class honors degree. Miss Udona Liebert, who got her bachelor's with a first-class honors degree. Mr. D.D.L.E.N. Griffin, who got his accounting degree with a first-class honors degree. And Miss Idona Brown, who got her BSc in Management Studies first class. Now, having been to UWI, I know that it is very difficult to get a first class. I tried and couldn't make the grade. So, I feel especially proud to associate myself with these Nevisians and residents who did so incredibly well and all graduated, for the most part, with first-class honors degrees and all with distinction. And so I say congratulations to them all. The UWI Global Campus is formerly known as the UWI Open Campus. The office which handles registration, classes, and all inquiries related to the courses offered is situated at the Ministry of Education building, Marion Heights. They can be contacted at 469-5521, extension 5094, Mondays to Fridays, 8 to 4. All of the graduates did their classes whilst on Nevis, and of course, as I mentioned, many graduated with first-class honors degrees. Registration for courses starting in January is now open. Now, I want to encourage our people out there who may be wanting to do a degree or some course to enhance their educational qualifications. I say to people all the time that I get calls as Premier of Nevis and people say, I need more money. I need more pay. Well, one of the best ways to ensure that you can attract more money, more pay, is for you to have more qualifications. The sense that some have, that because they've been in a position for a number of years, their pay must go up every month or every year, that is not the way it works. You need to be able to show that your qualifications are being enhanced. And now with the UWI Global Campus, you can do all of that from right here in Nevis. From the comfort of your home, you can get your degree. And these young people are clear evidence of what is possible. These young people would have studied from home, and as I said, the majority of them were able to get honors and distinction. And so I encourage, and I hope that their path will encourage others to do the same. Let me switch, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ministry of Health, a very important ministry. And to say that eye surgeries have resumed at our Alexandra Hospital under our well-known and well-respected Nevis Eye Care Program. A total of some 29 persons would have undergone cataract surgery over a 3-day period under the leadership of Dr. David Shield and his team. Dr. Raymond Huby, head of the program, has also announced that the program, through the generous contribution from the Four Seasons Homeowners Foundation, is now in possession of a brand new portable Oatley Catathex 3 phacoemulsification system. You know what I like about these notes when they're prepared? Because they put in brackets for me, cataract machine. That I can pronounce. And that costs $40,000 US. That machine, which is state-of-the-art, replaces the two larger, earlier model machines that are currently at the hospital. I think this is important, and I just want to pause, because from time to time I've come here and I've announced upgrades. Upgrades in our equipment, upgrades in our facilities, upgrades in terms of what we're doing at the health ministry and the Department of Health and our health sector generally. You've heard me talk about the fact that we've been able to secure state-of-the-art CT scan, state-of-the-art mammogram machine. We now have invested significantly in the systems, the computer systems to manage this. And now here we are, again, seeing an upgrade in terms of the machinery to deal with cataracts. So all of this, ladies and gentlemen, speaks to the strides that continue to be made in the context of our health care. I want to commend the Honorable General Nisbet, our minister, hard-working young minister, and her team, permanent secretary, and all of the functionaries for the strides that we continue to make. They're not making a lot of noise, but they're getting the job done. And we ought to be all grateful for that. 29 persons would have undergone cataract surgery over this past 3 days. It means that 29 people can see a bit better today because of the well-respected eye care program existing here on the island of Nevis. The Community Health Nursing Services would have had their annual diabetic symposium on the 14th of November in recognition of World Diabetes Day under the theme Access to Diabetes Care. Staff and patients engaged in a number of activities, and we had the benefit of a session led by health educator Michelle Sutton and a presentation on diabetic foot and wound care by guest speaker Paula Francis, nurse manager and wound care certified nurse from the Pogson Medical Center. I want to say thank you to our counterparts on St. Kitts. I believe that this is the best that I've seen in terms of health and cooperation. We are having so many health fairs and events on Nevis, and we see nurses from St. Kitts participating over here and vice versa. And I believe that that augurs well for a better coordination of our healthcare resources and our healthcare delivery to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Let me go on record to express gratitude to Mr. Troy Sadio, my good friend, for the recent donation of medical supplies to the Alexandra Hospital. Mr. Sadio is a native of Nevis, well-known in Visions. He resides in the United States, and he has year after year donated medical supplies to our health facilities. We're indeed grateful to him. And as I mentioned, Mr. Sadio, please forgive me, but to all of our family and friends in the diaspora, those who are in the United States, those who are in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, let me wish you a happy Thanksgiving, because you're enjoying your turkey today, and so we wish you a happy Thanksgiving. We all, in fact, have a lot to be thankful for. And so I celebrate with our friends and family in the United States, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and elsewhere, who are celebrating Thanksgiving today and into the weekend, of course. I'm sure they'll have an opportunity to relax and to spend time with family. The Ministry of Health was also the recipient of a donation of some $10,000 US towards the purchase of a shower trolley from the Swiss Embassy in St. Kitts. We want to say thank you to them. Of course, this makes it easier for persons who have mobility issues to shower at our hospital. It will be utilized at our flamboyant home for the aged. We are, ladies and gentlemen, continuing to encourage our women to take advantage of the mammogram testing that is available at our hospital. You will recall that in previous press conferences I have said that the mammogram service at our hospital is free until the end of the year. So if you're out there, you're female, you're over 40, then we're encouraging you, please, to go to your doctor, get from your doctor a recommendation, and go to the hospital and get your mammogram done for free. Some women argued that it was still outside their budget because they didn't have the money to pay the doctor fee. And so we went and we said, you know what, go to our health centers on the days when the doctors are there, And the doctors at our health centers will give you the necessary referral so that you can go to the hospital. So that means the doctor's visit and the mammogram are both free. This is important because we're trying to do the best that we can to fight breast cancer. And the mammogram has been demonstrated to be one of the best ways to detect breast cancer. Breast cancer detected early can be treated and can be cured. And so we're asking our women, please, just as we ask our men to go out and get the prostate exam when it's being offered, we're asking our women, please, to go. And the government has done all that it can do. We have invested in equipment. We have invested now in a radiologist at the hospital. We have now offered the service for free for the rest of this year. And when people say, well, I don't have the money to pay a doctor, we offer that for free too by saying go to the clinics. So really and truly, the only thing that it requires of you is the effort. That's all. Not a penny you have to pay. Just make the effort to go and have your mammogram done. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And a lot of people here on the island, a lot of our women who are suffering from breast cancer and dying from breast cancer, perhaps they can be helped if we have early detection. So please, if you're over 40 especially, or if you have a family history of breast cancer, we urge you to go and take advantage of this free service at the Alexandria Hospital. Now, why is it important? It is important because come January morning, God willing, 2024, we will be charging a fee for the mammogram services. So it is free until December 31st. So whether you're here, whether you're a citizen, resident, you're on island, we're asking you please to go and get that mammogram service. Another critical announcement. November 25th annually is designated as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The global theme of this year's 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, according to UN Women, is Unite, Invest to Prevent Violence Against Women and Girls, which emphasizes the need for funding prevention strategies to proactively stop gender-based violence. Our Gender Affairs Department is launching the 16 Days of Activism and encouraging the general public to wear the color orange this Friday to create an orange wave of activism against all forms of gender-based violence. Men especially, let me appeal to you. We should not be abusing physically, sexually, verbally, emotionally our women folk, our girls. We shouldn't be abusing anyone. But we need to take a stand together. And so I appeal to my fellow men. We are the perpetrators most times of violence against women and girls. So let me use this rostrum, let me use this bully pulpit, if you will, of the Premier to invite our men to cease and desist from that type of behavior. Let us respect and protect our women, our girls, and let us ensure that our homes and our communities are safe for those that live there. It is not manly to raise your hand to a woman. In fact, it is anything but manly. And so I want to urge us, please, because the changes that we want start with us. And since we, the men, are the culprits, we are the ones who need to make that change. I know sometimes people say, oh, women engage in violence too. And whilst that might be true, we all know that the main perpetrators of gender-based violence, domestic violence, are men, and Caribbean men especially. And so I urge all of our men folk here in Nevis, in St. Kitts and Nevis, and throughout the region, to join in this important fight to prevent gender-based violence and to protect our women and our girls. I move on a very important matter of national interest, and that has to do with the threat of dengue fever. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had some 57 cases reported thus far on the island of Nevis of dengue fever. Dengue is being spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. And whilst we are engaged in this fight, we had a meeting just yesterday at the cabinet with our health professionals. And the health team came to report specifically on where we are in this fight and what else we needed to do. I am asking, pleading, begging for the cooperation and the assistance of the public. The health professionals were very clear with us yesterday that the only way we're going to defeat the Aedes aegypti mosquito and defeat this dengue threat is for each and every one of us to help. How can you help? We know that mosquitoes require water to breed, stagnant water. And we are asking persons to go around their homes, their businesses, and to empty any container that has stagnant water. Sometimes we're not paying attention. So we may have, for example, a case of empty drink bottles, a case of beer bottles or soda bottles, and water has gathered in them, and you have mosquitoes breeding in them. Many of us like our flowers, and so we have our yards and our houses with flower pots. And we water our flowers, and water drains into the bottom of the pot. And we don't think about it, but mosquitoes are breeding there. A lot of us have ponds and various water features in our premises, fountains and the like. Mosquitoes are breeding there. I learned, for example, that bromelias, I think they're called, beautiful plant. But the plant, the way the leaves are shaped, water settles in the bromelias, and I'm now gathering that mosquitoes are breeding there. Some of our people, perhaps harking back to a time when we didn't have water in our pipes, still have drums and kits and buckets full of water all around their yard. Mosquitoes are breeding there. Some of us have garbage around, old tires, old cans, old pots and pans, old vehicles. And again, wherever water is gathering, mosquitoes are breeding. And so the health professionals are asking for your help. Dengue has the potential to impact all of us. While I'm pleased that all of our cases thus far recovered, I learned yesterday that there's something called hemorrhagic dengue. And where that happens, hemorrhagic dengue, and where that happens, I'm told that there is over 50% chance that the person can die. Now that is very serious. That is very serious. And we can all help if we just go around our yards and our communities and empty all of these containers that have stagnant water. If you have a bucket, empty it, turn it over. Look at your flower pots, look at your bromelias, look at the containers, clean up your yard, look and see if you have any garbage anywhere. Now the government is out. Just last night, on my way home, I drove through Cane Garden, and there were our professionals from health department doing some fogging in that area. I want to appeal especially to St. John's, because St. John's, my constituency, has the largest number of reported cases of dengue in Nevis. The largest. In fact, between St. John's and St. Paul's, we clearly have a concentration of dengue. Gingerland, not so much. St. James, not so much. St. Thomas's, not so much. But St. John's, significant. So it means that all the persons in St. John's, those in Bath, in Cherry Gardens, where we have large populations, we're asking you, please, take this seriously. Take this seriously, because dengue is a serious disease, and we need to fight it together. So I'm making that appeal. Please to our citizens and our residents to do what they can to assist. And it's very easy. Those of you who are listening and at home right now, go out in the yard right now and look around the yard and see what containers you may have that have water. Empty them. The fogging that is happening, I'm told we have to be careful with fogging. Because I learned yesterday that, for example, the chemicals that are used with the fogging can also be deadly for our bees. And certainly we don't want to kill off our bee population because we need the bees for pollination, we need them for honey. And the fogging, I'm told, is also something that only kills mosquitoes that are flying. So if the mosquitoes are at rest for some reason, the chemicals don't kill them. So I learned all that yesterday. And so that is why a lot of the fogging is taking place in the early evening when the mosquitoes are out and flying about doing their mischief. So, some good news is that the Aedes aegypti mosquito is local, meaning that apparently its range is only 200 meters. So, if it's in an area, it is largely or will be largely contained to that area. It's not going to fly from Gingerland to Newcastle. So that is assisting our health professionals by targeting in terms of their fogging. So when they find, for example, a case of dengue in Cherry Gardens, I'm using Cherry Gardens as an example, they can fog around the household and the immediate environs of where that case originates, because more than likely that is where the breeding ground is. So, I'm asking you please to take this seriously. The Ministry of Health will be rolling out more in terms of public education. We already, and I saw the health professionals out again yesterday with their loudspeaker, going around the communities and asking for the help of our communities. Please, I'm begging you, to look at the schedule and where it is possible to open your stores and your shops to accommodate our visitors who arrive on a Sunday. I'm asking our taxi operators to make yourselves available and don't just come with no joggers on your foot and short pants. I want you to come with your A game, your best, because you are our ambassadors. We have been working to grow this industry, but we need the support of those who are benefiting the most from it, our front line. And so those at the artisan village, those in town, taxi operators, the food vendors, we're asking all of you to look at the schedule and put yourself in a position, starting this Sunday, when 2 ships are going to be in. Please, we are doing the best we can. We don't control the schedules. So when the cruise ships come and they say they're coming on a Sunday, there's not much that we can do. But we are asking for you to adjust. If, for example, you are a taximan or you operate a business in town, and when you look on the schedule, you see that on this Sunday, the 26th, we have 2 cruise ships are coming into Charlestown. Maybe you say, well, you know what, let me go to the Saturday service or the Thursday evening service so that I can be free on Sunday morning to be there. Or if, as some of the churches do, they have morning and evening services on Sunday, well, let me go in the morning and make $1 and go in the evening to church. I'm not trying to discourage persons from going to church, but I'm encouraging us to organize ourselves in a way that we can benefit. Nothing bothers me more than driving through town on a Sunday, seeing all these people wandering around, like they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And everywhere is closed. And then, and I must say it because it is true, these sometimes are the same persons who call into every talk show on the radio to say how bad things are. And nothing is happening on the island. But money is there to be made. Business is there to be had. And they're not around. I know that leisure is important. Sunday, many say is their day of rest. The Adventists say that it's Saturday for them, Sunday for others. I understand that. But I also feel that when there's opportunity, that you seize that opportunity. Bearing in mind that the seasons are short seasons. So by the time April comes next year, there are no cruise ships. So if you have to speak to your priest or your pastor and say, Pastor, please understand that it is not that I am resiling from my commitments and my Christian faith, but rather that I know I have a short window and I have my bus to pay for and I have my family to feed. So please bear with me. In fact, I think the pastor will be understanding because they understand that you have to earn. And when you earn, put a little in the collection plate as well. That's important because the work of the church has to go on. So, I am appealing to our stakeholders. Do not see business go a-begging. Please. Because if you come later and complain, I'm going to ask you the question, where were you? Here I said, just over half of our cruise ship calls are going to be on Sunday. Not what we would like, but that is what we got. So work with what you get. And that is the position. Our taxi drivers especially, we need your taxis clean. We need you in the best of shape. And we need you to present the best face so that these cruise ship passengers can be converted to stayover passengers. Because that's what we use cruise to do in Nevis. We understand people are only here for a few hours, but we are hopeful that we can so enchant you that you say, you know what, I'm coming back to Nevis with my family to stay at a hotel. That's our model in Nevis. I'm told that we have only 52 calls for the year, and we expect about 18,000 visitors on those calls. You know that cruise is not a big part of what we do in Nevis. We focus on heads in beds, stay over. But certainly to have 18,000 visitors plus crew, it means that there's an opportunity there for persons to earn. And so I encourage our people, please, do not see business and let it go a-begging. A few updates from the Ministry of Agriculture. We were very pleased as we continue with our thrust for food security to welcome poultry consultant Mr. Dayanad Singh, who was here from the period November 13 to 17. Mr. Singh was able to meet with more than 50 potential poultry farmers, and he endorsed the equipment that we've already bought for the poultry processing plant. The consultancy was funded by AICA. Now, the reason why we brought in Mr. Singh, and I want to commend the Honorable Eric Evelyn and his team, is because we are aware that poultry industries, as we are trying to establish here, were established in Barbados, in Trinidad, in Jamaica. And what AICA said to us is that all of those countries made some big mistakes. And so they want to be able to shield us from making the same mistakes that would have been made in those places. And so from their lessons learned, we're getting an expert who's going to guide us to try and avoid some of those pitfalls. And so I want the people of Nevis to understand that we're not just jumping up and say we're getting into poultry. We're getting the expertise and the guidance, and we want to thank AICA for assisting us in that regard. Let me congratulate again the Cicely Brown Integrated School. They're doing some incredible work at that institution. They have won the greenhouse category and the Mudcross Preparatory School in the outdoor category for the School Agro competition. School Agro. Now, what is this about? It's about getting our youngsters involved in agriculture. Food security is an all-of-society approach. And so we're going into the primary schools and the high schools, and we're having competitions, and we're educating our children about the value of agriculture and the value of feeding ourselves. And so Cicely Brown has emerged winner again in the greenhouse category, in the Mudcross Prep, in the outdoor category in our School Agro competition. That competition took place over an 8-week period between September and November, and we congratulate all the primary schools for their effort in what is the second edition. I want members of the press and public to understand that when we lay out these things, I hope you're seeing a plan. You're seeing the education and the engagement of our youth. You're seeing investment in technology in terms of our shade houses. You're seeing the bringing in of experts to guide us in terms of our poultry. You're seeing the purchase of poultry processing equipment. We have had the groundbreaking for the poultry processing plant, which we hope to start very shortly. We are finalizing the acquisition of some lands to make available for the poultry farmers. We are working towards a plan. And that plan is intended to ensure that we have more locally produced food. And ladies and gentlemen, I want us as Nevisians to feel proud. Maybe enough is not being said, but we have had a quiet revolution in agriculture in Nevis over the past few years. I have said here time and time again that when the COVID virus hit, the COVID pandemic hit, we were not sure if the ships would come, tropical would come from Miami. And right in this room where we hold the cabinet, we said that if tropical doesn't come, what are people going to eat? Because while years ago we used to produce so much of what we eat, now we import most of what we eat. And the cabinet said as its primary response to COVID, we are going to invest in agriculture. And if you look at what we did over the period 2020, 2021, 2022, most of our resources were redirected to health because, of course, COVID was a health emergency, but also to agriculture. Free water, free seeds, free seedlings, free fertilizer, free shade houses, free fencing, free land preparation. We did all that to encourage our farmers. And I'm so pleased that we extended that to backyard farmers as well. And the result has been that more people are now involved in farming. More people are now growing something in the yard that they can eat. And I believe that that is very important. Nevis is now almost self-sufficient in egg production. We are almost self-sufficient in leafy greens like lettuce. And we want now to put a dent in our importation of poultry, chicken. It is one of the ironies that on an island surrounded by ocean, our people eat more chicken than fish. And that is largely due to the fact that chicken, as we know, is cheaper than fish. But people like chicken. I myself like chicken. But the truth is, we are importing chicken and we have no idea what is in the chicken that we're importing. Sometimes you go and you go to a barbecue and the size of the legs that I see now, they're the size of some small children. And you want to know how a chicken could get a leg big like a small child. I don't think those things are healthy. But that's what we are importing, and that's what we are eating. And whilst I don't know this to be true, it is clear to me that the more food that we import and the more processed food that we import, the more food full of hormones and chemicals that we import, the more we see disease and sickness here, cancers and the like on the rise. So to my mind, there's also a health benefit for us investing in producing more local food. I believe our local chicken will be better quality. It will have less harmful ingredients. We don't have to fill it with anything to preserve it because the possibility of getting it fresh. Imagine, if you will, that we have chicken here produced in places like Brazil on our shelves here. Now, if you have a chicken farm, a poultry farm in Brazil, let's draw in a reference. That chicken has to be raised, processed, refrigerated, shipped overland to the port, shipped via sea to Miami, shipped from Miami to here, and then put on our shelves. We don't even know how old that chicken is, how much time it has been refrigerated, how much chemicals have been used to preserve it. Compare that now to what we are proposing, local chicken, where you know as a local farmer you can produce your birds, the birds are processed, and that meat is on our shelves within a few days. Vast difference. The model that we are proposing, just like our current abattoir, we're going to have a central processing facility where we can control quality, and we're going to invite farmers to get themselves involved as business people and to invest in their farms that they produce the birds. So the farmers are going to produce the birds, they're going to bring the birds to the facility for processing, and then we will have that chicken marketed as local chicken. And I believe that that is certainly going to put a dent in our very high import bill for chicken at the moment. I said we're not saying enough about agriculture. And the reason I say that is because sometimes what we do locally, there's so much noise sometimes that good things get drowned out by the noise. Nevis is an interesting exercise, an interesting example of democracy at work. We are robust in our commentary. It's democracy on steroids. Why do I say that? Nevis is the only place I know where the government will pave 4 or 5 miles of road, but people put up a whole article on social media about a single pothole that they see someplace else. We tend to major in minor here on the island. And a lot of the talk that we hear, it's all negative. Nothing good is happening. But what I want to say about agriculture is that just during the week of November 6th, we had not one, not two, but 3 delegations came to Nevis to look at what we are doing in Nevis in agriculture. A group came from Antigua and Barbuda. You know why they came? They said somehow they now have the vervet monkey in Antigua. I don't know if they swim go Antigua, how they reach to Antigua, but I'm told they're now in Antigua. And just how they create damage down here, they're creating damage in Antigua. The Antiguan officials came to see what we were doing. And we have quietly here on the island developed a very effective control mechanism so that our farmers now are not complaining as much about monkeys destroying their farms. They came to see what we were doing, to learn from us. Antigua came to Nevis. We had a group from Anguilla. The Anguillan government looked across, saw what we were doing in Nevis and said, let us send. And when I look at the lady who led that group, I think she's the head of fisheries in Anguilla. You know what she said? We've come to Nevis to learn best practices. I sometimes wonder if Nevisians understand what is happening on this island. Anguilla said they've come to us to learn best practices in agriculture. And then we had a group from our sister island of St. Kitts, a group of farmers. And they came over, and from what I'm told, they marveled at what they're seeing happening in Nevis. At what we're doing, the investment we've made in storage at the Lawrence and Parry facility to assist in marketing and extending the shelf life of the produce that is generated from our farmers. The products, the range and quality of products at our abattoir. How our extension farmers are working, our fruit orchard at Indian Castle, our plans for poultry, the fact that most of our farms are fenced, have the electric fencing at the top to keep out the monkeys, and most importantly, Nearly every single farm on the island of Nevis has irrigation on site. And I did not even know, but most of the farms in St. Kitts don't have water on site. They don't have drip systems. They're rain fed. So the farmers in St. Kitts are in large measure depending on the rains to water their farms. In Nevis, virtually every farm has a drip system that's in place. And so the farmers, in their own reactions, spoke about what they saw and how pleased they were to see what Nevis was doing. Remember, in Nevis, there are some who say nothing is happening. But Antigua come, Anguilla come, St. Kitts come to say, let us learn from you. And I want to commend again our minister and team for the excellent work that they're doing. As I mentioned, the abattoir, let me put out a plug. The abattoir says, the principles there, that they are accepting your orders for smoked hams and smoked and rotisserie chicken for Christmas season. Please, don't say I didn't tell you, because a lot of people wait and then they don't get any. So please go and get your smoked hams. The hams especially are excellent. Local ham, local chicken, all being done here in Nevis at the abattoir. Moving quickly, Public Works. I just want to advise that we have done some extensive works in the Nisbet settlement area, Rollins Pasture. The Water Department has laid 3,500 feet of 4-inch HDPE pipeline. This commenced on October 2nd, was completed on November 10th. In an effort to relieve customers in the Port View development in Montpelier, suffering from low water pressure, a partial 4-inch PVC pipeline, approximately 500 feet in length, was constructed. That commenced on October 7th, was completed on October 18th, and we put on pressure-reducing valves in the Montpelier area to control pressures downstream. We commenced a project in low ground on November 7th. It's an area just south of the top of Cherry Garden. Approximately 1,500 feet of 4-inch PVC mains will be installed. And the problem over there, especially with our farmers in that area, they were complaining of low water pressure. So we'll solve that problem for them. So I want to commend the Water Department. And my last statement is by way of public notice. Members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, you would have heard much talk about the airport project, where this government has committed to expanding and modernizing the Vance Amory International Airport. We have decided to do so because the current airport facility is inadequate and there's no traffic there. So we have decided that it is appropriate that we develop that facility. We have a partner with us, and we are proposing what is referred to as a public-private partnership to develop the airport. It will be a significant project, and as this government always does things, we are open and transparent about what we do. We have said to the public that when we are ready, we will have the necessary consultations. And I'm happy to announce that with the leadership of the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, who has been charged to lead this project for the government, that the consultations with the engineers and the designers of the project, that consultation, the first consultation will be on Monday, the 4th of December. It will be at the St. Paul's Anglican Church Hall in Charlestown, commencing at 6 p.m. So for those who have questions, they have suggestions, they have comments, they want to understand the scope of the project, they want to know what is happening, we will have the first consultation on Monday, the 4th of December. And that will be at the St. Paul's Anglican Church Hall right here in Charlestown, commencing at 6 p.m. At this meeting, the proposed plans for the upgrade and expansion of the Vance Amory International Airport will be presented. Additionally, we will be asking for your suggestions, your recommendations, and we welcome all to come. We recall that there was a lot of hullabaloo about no consultation, but consultations can only happen when you're ready. And so we now have the engineers, the consultants on island. We now have the designs, and so we are now ready to say to the public, this is what we are proposing in terms of some details of what we are proposing, and to get the public feedback in that regard. So I ask the public to come out in their numbers on the 4th of December at the St. Paul's Anglican Church at 6 p.m. and to ask the consultants whatever questions they may have and to make their recommendations and suggestions as we try to build out the infrastructure and this critical piece of infrastructure, the airport, for the benefit of the future economic advancement of the island of Nevis. Thank you very much, and I'll now take whatever questions you may have for me.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Elke Hewlett.
Good morning.
The Department of Information. There was a resolution on geothermal development in Nevis passed in the in the National Assembly on Monday, I think it was. And in some corners, it's been said that the federal government is taking over the project. Can you bring some context to what transpired in the National Assembly? Second question, can you explain the reason behind the amendment to the Integrity in Public Life Ordinance, as the opposition is claiming the amendment is unconstitutional? We are also seeing an upsurge in homicides, especially gun-related homicides and armed robberies in the Federation. While it's largely been localized to St. Kitts, would you say there is cause for concern on Nevis, and how does this affect the Federation on a whole? Finally, public servants in both St. Kitts and Nevis have been on double salary watch, I think, for the past few weeks. And if the federal government does not pay a double salary, is the NIA in a position to do so for those hard-working public servants over here on Nevis? Thanks.
Double salary for hard-working public servants. If we could only give it to the hard-working public servants, then I would say yes. Fortunately, the way it's structured is the hard workers get it, and those who don't do any work at all get it as well, and that is a problem that I've always had. I'm not so sure why we're on double salary watch. I think that we should be on our salary watch. That is the salary we work for. And what I can tell you, you can watch in Nevis is a pay increase that is going to come in January. A 5% salary increase that was promised. It's the last tranche in the 15% increase that we have offered. And I feel very proud about that we made that commitment and we're keeping that commitment. So every public worker in Nevis is going to see a 5% increase in their salary on January 1st, being the last tranche, the last piece of the promised 15%. So I think in Nevis, we, as a government, have done well by our public servants, because nowhere else in the private sector or elsewhere has there been a 15% salary increase in the last 2 years. We have done that in Nevis, and we have made the provision, and will make the provision in this budget for that increase to take effect in January. Double salary, no. The NIA will not be paying a double salary unless one is announced in St. Kitts. And I believe I have made my views known on this double salary. I think that it is not the best approach. It's my position. I may be alone in that position, but I don't think it's the best approach. I feel that what we need is an approach that rewards those workers who do well, those workers who come to work, those workers who work hard. I see my friends here from NTV. I know you all work hard to reward those. There are other workers who don't do any work, and we shouldn't pretend that we don't know. You go downtown now, what is the time? After 11, you'll find some down there right now drinking. You will. Some supposed to go lunch for an hour, they take an hour and a half, they take 2. They come late in the morning, they take extra time for lunch, and they leave early in the afternoon. Why should they get a double salary? What are we celebrating when we give them a double salary? So to me, what we need is a system based on incentivizing and rewarding. So when a worker who's not working well sees his colleague getting a benefit because the colleague is on time, the colleague is professional, he then says, well, let me pull up my socks. But if that worker who's doing no work is getting the same benefit as the worker who's working hard, you know what that leads to? The worker who's working hard says, well, I'm not going to work any hard either. I'm not going to bother. Because what I realize happening in this department is no matter who work and who don't work, everybody get the same reward. So we need to rethink this approach about double salary. That's my view. And we need to find a way where we have evaluations done, and at the end of the year, we say these are the top performers, they get something. If you're not performing, better luck next year. Pull up your socks. But this thing of giving everybody, I think, works ultimately as a disincentive for those workers who are really committed to the task at hand. I don't know what the Prime Minister is going to do. That is a matter for him, no doubt, to announce, but we'll wait and see. But as I said, that is my personal preference, would be to get a system in place to assist and reward those who perform well. Because some public servants go well beyond the call of duty. They're there early, they leave late, they're helpful, they're courteous, they understand the assignment. Others, really, the only thing they come to work for is to mark their name so they could collect the pay at the end of the week or at the end of the month. Other than that, they have no interest. And so to give that person the same reward, I think, doesn't make sense and doesn't work. There's another point I want to make about double salary. In Nevis, for example, double salary costs, and I'm giving rough numbers, would cost about $10 million. In Sinkis, that number is probably closer to $25 or $30 million. So each time a double salary is announced, you're talking about anywhere from $35 to $40 million that has to be found to pay out to public servants. Now, if I happen to be a taxi driver, I'm contributing to the country as well. If I happen to be a lady who's packing the shelves or a gentleman who's working in the back of Rams, I'm contributing as well. If I happen to be a small business person, I braid hair, I fry and sell chicken, I barbecue chicken. I'm a fisherman, I'm a farmer. All of us are contributing to national development. But when every year civil servants get something and them don't get nothing, bearing in mind that the money that is being paid out is coming from our Citizenship by Investment program. Well, the Citizenship by Investment program belongs to all of us. It belongs to the civil servant, to be sure, but it also belongs to the farmer. It belongs to the fisher. It belongs to the small business owner. It belongs to the lady at Rams packing the shelf. It belongs to the taxi man. So put yourself sometimes in their shoes and say, well, how do you think they feel that every year you see people walking home in December with 2 pay and they sometimes can't get 1? I think we need a system that is balanced and fair. Frankly, I very much like the system that the Prime Minister introduced of the CBI dividend, where he said if you're registered with Social Security and you're up to date, you can benefit. Because that means everybody across the board was able to benefit. But when every year you only benefit some people and then others. I look at the statistics in Nevis. We have over 6,000 employees, workers in Nevis, according to Social Security. We know the number is higher because not everybody has gone and registered with Social Security. I'm begging them to do so. There are also lots of self-employed people who have not yet registered with Social Security, and again, I beg them to do so. But we have just over 6,000 persons registered with Social Security. Of those, about 1,900 are government workers, established, non-established, weekly, monthly, etc. So if that 1,900 keeps getting a double salary, what happens to the other 4,000 who are working every day and contributing every day as well? I think our system requires greater equity, greater balance, and we need to celebrate all of our people. This is not to diminish the contribution of our public servants. Not at all. But I, for example, have said that during COVID, our public servants were in a privileged position where they got paid in full and on time every single week, every single month. Whether we were on lockdown or not, whether they were at work or not, they got paid. That was a commitment that this government made and a commitment that we were able to keep to our public servants. That was not true of the taxi man. There were no tourists. That was not true of the hotel worker. That was not true of the fisherman who, when he catch a lobster, have no hotel to sell him to and no restaurant to sell him to. That was not true of the restaurant worker. And yet it seems that the response was again to say, well, how do we reward public servants some more and ignore the rest of the community? So I think that we need to sit down and really work out an equitable arrangement, Ms. Hewlett. And I note your plug of the hard-working public servants, and there are many, but I think we need a system that rewards the hard workers and does not reward mediocrity. So that is my 2 cents on that. The resolution on geothermal, I think, was historic. And so the people can understand. We had a situation here in St. Kitts and Nevis, or we have a situation, where we have large deposits of geothermal energy. But by God's own work, that is located in Nevis. St. Kitts does not have any geothermal energy. I don't know the reason, but just similarly, you could have oil in one place and in the next place you don't. You have gold in one place, in the next place you don't. It's God's work. But we know we have it, and we've known now for nigh 2 decades that we have this geothermal energy. We have not been able to extract it because a lot of the people we have spoken to, they say, you know, the project in Nevis is just for 12,000 people. It's too small. They want, of course, a national project. That is a project with St. Kitts and Nevis. And I regret to say that for far too long, those in Bastia have undermined the efforts in Nevis to access geothermal. Successive governments have done so, including the government that I was a part of. I would remind the press that when Nevis was talking about developing the known resource that St. Kitts announced during Team Unity administration that they were pursuing geothermal in St. Kitts. In fact, I believe they gave some contract to a French company, if memory serves, when they knew very well that there was no geothermal to be had in St. Kitts. But of course, we know that there were problems in that construct, created not by the construct, which I still think was a brilliant idea, but by the people in that construct. And so one of the problems that Nevis found itself in is that we could not move our project forward because if we tried to go private, they said it was too small. And when we tried to go by using funds from Green Climate Fund and CDB and all of that, they said, hey, Nevis has no standing, so we want to hear from Bastia, federal government, on this project. So we were caught. I have said before, and I say it here now again, that in order to have the CDB Board of Governors consider the geothermal project in Nevis, we needed a letter from the Office of the Prime Minister to say that the federal government supported the project in Nevis. And we begged and pleaded for that letter from the then Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris. That letter never came. Without it, the CDB could not proceed. We had a change of government in August of 2022. And in my very first meeting with the new Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, I raised this geothermal project. So Dr. Drew, the project requires the support of the federal government if we are to access funding from the CDB. And within a week, that letter had gone to the CDB by the new Prime Minister. That was August of 2022. By December of 2022, the CDB board approved $17 million for this project. That's the first real money that we've had committed to the Nevis project, was the CDB money, and what they call a contingency recoverable grant. All that means is, if they drill and the drilling fails, the money is a grant. If they drill and the drilling succeeds, the money will be transferred into a low-interest long-term loan. But Nevis has no capacity to access CDB funding absent the federal government. I want people to understand that, because while CDB will speak to us, we'll get all the details and the working technical teams and engage with us, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, it is the federal government that has standing, not the NIA. The NIA for them is like a local government. You know, in Jamaica they have local government and they have the central government. So the international agencies, foreign governments, are going to speak to the central government. So when I was foreign minister, for example, I raised with the Americans, I raised with others, the possibility of funding for geothermal. In fact, through my intervention with the United States, we were able to get technical assistance from the US State Department, the Energy Desk. I wasn't aware, however, that while I was in one church, in one pew, singing one song, that others in my government were in a different church, in a different pew, singing a different song. And so the US and those said, St. Kitts Nevis is not serious. So, we're not sure what you all want, because Nevis said they want geothermal, St. Kitts saying. In fact, instead of pursuing geothermal, you all recall that St. Kitts went ahead and signed a contract for a massive solar project. Leclanche or something like that was the company. They signed a 20 megawatt, I think, solar project at a price which would be more than double the price that we would pay for geothermal energy if we were able to access it. But I said it in the Parliament on the debate, and I'll say it here again. It appears that in some quarters in St. Kitts there was a concern that somehow Nevis is going to be in control of this resource, and Nevis is going to be in control of the energy. And I'm saying, if those in Bastia had a view and a perspective that we are one country, then it really wouldn't matter that the resources in Nevis are in Sandy Point. What would be important is, how do we commercialize the resource to benefit all the people of the country? We've already done the interconnectivity studies. St. Kitts and Nevis is not like Antigua, Barbuda, or Trinidad and Tobago. St. Kitts and Nevis, you could swim from one to the next. We actually have the cross-channel swim that's coming up in the new year. Every year we do it. We could swim from one to the next. That's how close we are. People can go on jet skis from one to the next. If you take the water taxi, 5 minutes, you leave Nevis, you're in St. Kitts. It's only 2 miles at the closest point. So the New Zealanders have already done the interconnectivity study for us years ago. They say all you need to do is run a cable under the sea, 2 miles. And when you turn on the switch here, St. Kitts get geothermal. So it's within our grasp. What we lacked was the political will. And that is not new, you know. You recall when the NRP held the reins here in Nevis for the period 2006 until 2013. The then Premier made public statements about seeking guarantees, seeking support, Bastia, for this project. It wasn't forthcoming. We got in as a government in 2015. Again, that support was not forthcoming. And so what happened on Monday, Madam Hewlett, was instructive, and it was historic. Because we have a Prime Minister now who understands that the future of St. Kitts and Nevis and his ability to achieve the sustainable island state that he has set as his goal as Prime Minister, that Nevis holds the key. And that key is geothermal energy, renewable energy. That is why Mr. Daniel Pierce, who's here, was able to journey to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to talk to them about geothermal. I am going to be out of jurisdiction in a few days, traveling to Colombia, to Cartagena, again to speak about geothermal. The world out there is excited about what is happening here in terms of geothermal. And we've had and known about this resource for years. So instead of St. Kitts and Nevis undermining each other, I don't really want to put it that way, because that suggests Nevis was involved. Instead of Bastia undermining Charlestown in terms of the exploration and development of this resource, the Prime Minister and I have spoken and we said, listen man, let us do this thing together. Let us do this thing together. I don't care who gets the credit. It doesn't bother me. What I care about is being able to come to my office here at the Social Security building, turn on lights, turn on AC, and know that all of that is powered by renewable. To see all of our hotels on the island switch over to renewables. To see our people being able to zoom up and down on their electric scooters and buy electric cars, and for us to put charging stations across the length and breadth of St. Kitts and Nevis. So you plug, charge up and go. Get rid of all these old diesel vehicles and gasoline vehicles and transform our economy. I want to see a day, Ms. Hewlett, when our people can benefit from us exporting energy. So what do you think when we get geothermal energy here, and the science is telling us that Nevis has nearly 1,000 megawatts of available geothermal energy? I want people to understand that, we have nearly 1,000 megawatts of available geothermal energy on the island. But currently, Nevis at peak is only 9 megawatts. And St. Kitts at peak is less than 30. I think it's about 25 megawatts. So what that means is that with just 40 megawatts, we supply all of St. Kitts and Nevis at peak. I want to emphasize at peak, because when people are sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, it drops in Nevis, I think it drops to about 6 megawatts. So at peak, we can supply all of St. Kitts and Nevis overnight and still have hundreds of megawatts of power available. So what are we going to do with it? This is where now it gets interesting, because we can now export Saba, Statia, St. Bart's, St. Martin, Antigua, Anguilla. None of them have any geothermal capacity. We can now export power to them. The technology now has developed where they are exporting power in terms of hydrogen, ammonium. In fact, ammonia is one of the key ingredients in fertilizer. Imagine, as we talk about food security, that you could now have locally produced fertilizer that you can then sell to the rest of CARICOM because of the byproducts of geothermal. The numbers that I have seen thus far, and I'm hoping that they get lower, not higher, is that geothermal could be available to us as low, as cheap as 9 cents per kilowatt hour. It's US cents. Compare that to the fact that we're paying over 40 cents per kilowatt hour for diesel energy. So just imagine, members of the press, that you move from over 40 cents down to 9 cents, below 10 cents. Do you know what you could do now? We could air condition the whole of Charlestown. Nevis will be the only place when you walk you don't feel no sun. AC in the air. We make light of it, but I'm saying that we are on the cusp of a revolution. And it is because Prime Minister Drew understands that he and I met and we said, listen, we need to demonstrate to the world that St. Kitts and Nevis, government and opposition, are on the same page in relation to this project. And that is why this resolution, Ms. Hewlett, is so important. This resolution signifies a new day for the exploration and development of this resource for the benefit. So I am not fussed about people who say the federal government has taken over the project. We know that is not true. The project is being administered in Nevis by NEVLEC. But we also understand that the federal government's involvement is important if we are going to be able to access funds. Nevis, for example, couldn't go to Saudi Arabia. Even if we went, Saudi Arabia would say, yes, we're interested, but we need the federal government to sign off. So I hope people understand where I'm coming from. That this is not time to start to fight over this. This is time to work together to develop it so that the man in Keon, the man in Keys, the man in Charlestown, the man in Brownhill, that all of those people can benefit from this resource. And that's what it's all about. So instead of us fighting, we have decided to come together. Instead of us undermining each other, we've decided to come together. I think it's a good day. And I said so during the Parliament. I said, so now I commend the Prime Minister and his team, everybody that spoke. In fact, I commend my team. Because the Honorable Alexis Jefferson and the Honorable Eric Evelyn spoke eloquently. Their support of this approach, joint approach, a national approach to develop this resource for the benefit of the nation. And I am saying that Nevis holds the key to the future sustainability of this island state. Because we are the ones here in Nevis who have the resource, and it is all we needed was a political will, which we now have, and which that resolution signifies. The amendments to the IPL ordinance, very quickly. The integrity in public life is part and parcel of what we committed to do as a government to have greater openness and transparency in government. Me being here for my 11th press conference for the year is also part of it. We promised that we would have an opportunity to engage with the press to answer questions as the case may be, and to set up an integrity commission modeled off integrity commissions across the region to allow a greater check on public officials who are caught by that legislation. The structure was that we would have one person in the commission, a three-person commission, one appointed on the advice of the Premier, one appointed on the advice of the Leader of the Opposition, and the Chair, who must be a retired judge or lawyer of 15 years' experience, appointed by the Deputy Governor General in her own deliberate judgment. That means nobody's advising her in relation to that one. She decides. Now, when we operationalized this legislation, which was passed by a CCM administration in 2013, when I campaigned as a leader of CCM in 2017, and we got the mandate from the people, we said that one of the things we would do is operationalize this legislation. Of course, we went to the polls in December of 2017, and the people gave the CCM 4 of the 5 seats. So there was only one seat in opposition, being Mr. Parry, Joseph Parry at the time. The thing about it is that the legislation to set up the IPL commission called for a leader of the opposition to appoint someone. Mr. Parry could not be leader of the opposition because under Section 58 of our Constitution, the leader of the opposition has to have the support of at least one other member. And Mr. Parry was alone on the opposition benches. The difference, Ms. Hewlett, was that Mr. Parry was a mature politician. Mr. Parry understood why he was sent to Parliament, not for himself, but to represent the people of St. Thomas's. And so Mr. Parry and I had an open dialogue. You may not have seen us clinking glass and sitting down for dinner out publicly, but we spoke regularly. He engaged with me. So when this issue arose, he knew he could not be leader of the opposition because constitutionally he had no one to support him, and the leader of the opposition under the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, requires that that person has the support of at least one other person. Well, if he's alone, clearly, he can't have the support of anybody else. But Mr. Parry and I sat down and we discussed the matter. I said, Parry, listen, man, we're trying to get this thing going. People have voted the way they voted. You can't be leader of the opposition. But can you speak to the Deputy Gigi about a possible nominee so that we can get the commission up and running? And he did. And Alfred Tyrrell was appointed. And so the commission has been doing its work. The commission had a tenure of 5 years. The 5 years is now up. I want to make a note that it was similar for when we budgeted for an office for the leader of the opposition. Again, Mr. Parry could not hold the title of leader of the opposition, but this government extended the courtesy to him. And we said, Mr. Parry, while you can't be leader of the opposition, because you do not have anybody supporting you, we nevertheless are going to pay for the office, rented office, furnish, provide staff. Because we thought that it was important that the opposition had an office. If dignitaries and things come in, for example, to see, they want to talk to the opposition, they want to talk to the government. We budgeted for that. Again, an example of our engagement with the opposition and what I call maturity, political maturity. As a matter of fact, prior to my administration, it had never been done. There was never an office for the opposition in Nevis prior to my administration. We went into an election on the 12th of December. The people voted. Their voice is the voice of God. And they took one of the seats from us and gave it to NRP. And so whereas we went in with 4 seats, we came out with 3. We still were able to form the government. We still won the majority of seats, and we still won the popular vote. But the NRP now, under a new leader, had 2 seats. Well, they increased the tally from what they had with Mr. Parry. And having 2 seats, it means, therefore, that the NRP leader had one person elected on the NRP ticket who could support her to be leader of the opposition. So, naturally, I, and I'm sure members of the press and the rest of the public, expected that the leader would be announced, leader of the opposition, and what would flow from that is that she would then nominate somebody to the Integrity Commission. She would then appoint or advise on the appointment of a senator. I don't know if many of you remember, but that's where I started. I was a senator in the CCM on the CCM side, the opposition side, in 2006. Because the then leader of the opposition, the Honorable Vance Emery, recommended me to be appointed in that position. That's where I got my start in Parliament. Some young person right now in Nevis, some aspiring politician, could have been sitting in the House in Nevis as a senator on the opposition benches. But unfortunately, as we all know, what unfolded was complete chaos. And the leader of NRP could not get her team together, could not get the support of the deputy leader, the honorable member for number 5, St. Thomas's. And the result was open war, chaos, confusion, bacchanal. It played out locally and regionally. On the airwaves, they went after each other in the worst way until eventually the leader expelled the deputy leader. And in the parliament now, we have one member from NRP, the leader. We have one member who now says that she's an independent because she was expelled from the NRP. So I want the public to understand that had that chaos not ensued, there would have been a leader of the opposition, and that leader of the opposition would have nominated somebody to the Integrity Commission. Because that chaos ensued, you have the leader of the NRP sitting down over here, face vex up. The member for number 5, St. Thomas, is sitting down over here, face vex up. He's like the Jews and the Samaritans. I'm over on the other side. The Integrity Commission tenure has ended. We need to reappoint. The Governor General, the Deputy Governor General, has reappointed Ricardo Keynes. I have reappointed Sidney Newton. The Commission can't meet. The Commission can't function because a third member is missing. Remember I said when only Mr. Perry was there, Mr. Perry and I were able to talk, and I said, Mr. Perry, man, talk to the Deputy GG and see. And he was able to put somebody forward. In this case, nobody's talking, no consensus, no discussion. In fact, I said in the Parliament that the 12th of December is going to make a full year since I have been re-elected as Premier. I have not in that time heard a single word from the leader of NRP. No issues raised with me on behalf of our constituents. No issues raised with me on behalf of anything to do with Nevis. So I don't know how it is that she anticipates she's going to function, because at the end of the day, there is a government in place. And in the ordinary course, when you're in opposition, you approach the government to get things done for your constituents. For whatever reason, the good lady has decided that she will not speak to the government, or certainly not to the Premier. And the result of that is that to understand what is going on in the constituency that she represents, I have to go to the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. He is who keeps me informed about what's happening in St. James and what the people of St. James need and what it is they're doing, because the person they elected refuses to engage. I can't say the same about the member for number 5 because she engages regularly. She always saying she need this, she need that done in the constituency. That's how it should be. So there's no dialogue, there's no engagement, and so we have the commission cannot be constituted and therefore cannot meet. We have a whole office, staff. We're paying rent, we're paying staff. We have all of this infrastructure in place, and the commission can't be constituted because the opposition can't appoint somebody. So it's against that backdrop that we went into the Parliament. And we said, listen, we can't allow the confusion that is in the opposition to frustrate the legitimate interest of the government and people for integrity in public life and an open and more transparent government structure. So what did we do? We said we will amend to say this. One member appointed on the advice of the Premier, that remains. The chair appointed in the own deliberate judgment of the Deputy Governor General, that remains. The third member will be appointed on the advice of the leader of the opposition. Whereas now, there is no leader of the opposition. If there is a single member of the opposition, as there was during Mr. Parry's time, then that single member will advise the Deputy Governor General on the appointment. If, as now, there is more than one member of the opposition, then those two who are there will have to agree on a nominee and communicate that nominee to the Deputy Governor General. If they refuse to agree, then the Premier will have to step in. And so I want the public to understand that this is not, as it has been portrayed, some attempt by the Premier, some attempt by the government to stack. The opposition must do its job. And the language that was employed by one of the speakers yesterday in the Parliament was that they need to grow up. This is big people business. Grow up, do your job. This thing about I don't like this and I don't like this person, that's high school melee. Do your job. This is not the time to push up your mouth and strip your mouth and say you not talk to people. This is important government business. And so, Ms. Hewlett, it is critical for them now to agree who their nominee is. And once they agree, they pass that to the deputy GG and we're in business. But if they cannot agree, if we cannot see some communication saying the Honorable Janice Daniel Hodge and the Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons have agreed that Mr. X or Ms. Y is their nominee, then the Premier is going to have to act, because we cannot allow the entire infrastructure, the entire framework of integrity in public life to be frustrated by the opposition. But even where the legislation says the Premier will act, it says the Premier still has to consult with the opposition before he acts. That's what the legislation says. So the third member then will be appointed on the advice of the leader of the opposition. If there's none, there's only one member in opposition, then on the advice of that one member. If, as we have now, two, but they're not together, then they must come together to agree on who the nominee is going to be, and then on their advice. And only if all of those fail does it come back to the Premier, who cannot appoint until he consults with the opposition. Well, what more could we do as a government? We give you 1, 2, 3 bites at the cherry to get this thing done. So all this chatter about unconstitutional and all that. IPL is not a creature of the Constitution. Integrity in public life is a creature of statute. It's nothing unconstitutional whatsoever. This country existed from 1983. It is 2013 that we passed IPL legislation. It's nothing unconstitutional. The Constitution actually doesn't come into play at all. I have heard the commentary saying, oh, I should be changing the Constitution. It just demonstrates the ignorance, because the Nevis Island Administration, the Nevis Island Assembly, has no authority to change the Constitution. And why should we change the Constitution? To fix NRP confusion? But let's face it. Why should we go through a process of changing the Constitution when all that they require is to grow up, sit down, and work out the issues? But the whole country must change the Constitution because they can't get along. I just hope that the people of Nevis are paying attention. Homicides in the Federation. Ms. Hewlett, I want to express my very deep condolences to the families that have suffered. We have heard the horrific news of multiple murders on our sister island of St. Kitts yesterday. Somewhere, I'm told, in the St. Peter's area. And I want to use this opportunity to express, as I've done before, my deep condolences to the families who are now in mourning. But also to use this opportunity to call on our people again to come together, band together in this fight against crime and criminality. Crime, I have said, is a social problem. It comes from us. It is our sons and daughters who are involved in it. It is our sons and daughters who are victims of it. And criminals, I don't think, are born. Criminals are made. They're created by the environments that they're raised in. Family, school, community. And I believe that all of us need to take some measure of responsibility. Some people say, oh, I lead a lawful life. I lead a Christian life. I'm not involved in criminality. And whilst that may be true, you may sometimes be engaging in behavior that encourages others to misbehave. You may sometimes be benefiting from behavior that is criminal. You may sometimes, through your actions or inaction. A lot of people, for example, say, let the police go and do their work. But when they see crime, they're not prepared to share any information with the police. As if the police are superhuman. And so by some process of discernment, the police will automatically know who commits every crime, and the police will be everywhere. Every country in the world. No matter how rich they are, no matter how well resourced they are, depends on their population to fight crime. Every country. You go to the great United States of America, the minute something happens, it's all over the news. Police are asking, please call the tip line. I don't watch something called the First 48 or something. It's a program I like to watch on television. Whenever there's a homicide, they say the first 48 hours are critical. The police depend on the community to fight crime. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a community that is not prepared to assist the police, but keeps saying they need to do more. So crime is our problem. It is fashionable to curse the government when crime occurs. And I believe the government must bear responsibility, because ultimately the buck stops with the government. Policy, legislation, all of those are within the purview of the government. That is why we have a minister and a ministry of national security. But I have been around politics long enough to know that no government can solve crime on its own. None. And while we may have programs that curb it for a while, if the underlying reasons for that crime aren't addressed, it's going to bubble back up again. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. We had the peace program that was in place under Team Unity. It didn't function the way I think those of us who were at the table thought it should. It was hijacked. But that's a discussion for a different time. But that peace program suppressed violent crime because people were being incentivized not to engage in violent crime. But it did not address the underlying root causes. So at the minute that that peace program was not being administered in quite the same way, the crime bubbled back up. For example, I argued inside and outside the cabinet that the peace program and payments to these youngsters must and should have been coupled with some removal of guns from the street. There was one incident where a youngster was caught with a firearm. I think he came to Nevis to buy the firearm, if memory serves. And he was caught and sentenced, convicted and sentenced. And that youngster was on the peace program. And it seems to me that peace money was being used for better arms, better guns. So you did not have a holistic approach to the program. Program was a good program, well-intentioned. The program was designed to divert people, to say to somebody who committed a crime, perhaps young in life, and now has a record, can't get a job, if they applied 4 seasons, they see the record, can't get a visa. So people feel like, man, we're not a criminal, we're going to stay a criminal. No. The program was designed to say, listen, if you have a skill, you're a good landscaper, you're a good mechanic, you have a business idea, create an avenue for you to do something different. That is really what the program was designed to do. Somewhere along the line, the program became just paying people money, because that suited the political agenda of some. But it did not address the underlying cause and the underlying roots. So it seems to me that some fellows say, boy, I'm going to collect the money because the money will flow. And I'm going to lie low. But the minute that things change, the fundamental tool that the criminals are using for this horrific brutality is the gun. And we never coupled the reward with any responsibility on the other side. And so, we now have an explosion again in gun violence. It means that we need to go back and have another look at this. I have said publicly that the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, he needs to step above and beyond the politics. And even though there are some out there now who every time there is an act of violence, they put out a press release as if there is something to be celebrated. I feel that the better approach, which can only come from the Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, is to reach out to all stakeholders, including the opposition, and to say, listen, if we love this country as we say we do, and let us put aside the PAM politics and the CCM and the NRP politics and the PLP politics and the Labour politics, and I can't remember the other name, the party, MRI, MR something in Nevis politics. They put aside all of that. And let us get together and see how we can work together. All of us singing from the same hymn. I hope the member of the press see how many times I've made that reference, because I like the idea of singing from the same hymn, being in the same pew. There are some things, and I mentioned about CBI some weeks ago, that I did not agree with the approach by some to destroy it. I will not join them in that. I also do not agree with the approach now to politicize crime. And I say that as somebody who spent quite some years in opposition. And I used to be a very vigorous as a young politician. I fell into that same approach. Oh, it's your job to secure. With the benefit of age and wisdom, I have come to realize that it is our job. And this is not to absolve the Prime Minister and the government of their responsibility, because the buck stops with them. But sometimes, when we say it is their job, we ignore what we ourselves need to be doing. So, just like we have an obligation to assist the police, a lot of these murders in Nevis go unsolved, not because the police don't know who did them, but the evidence that the police need to charge and to prosecute is not always forthcoming. Because all of us become blind, deaf, mute when it comes to doing our civic duty and stepping up to the plate and helping to solve the problem. We all are of the view that it is somebody else's responsibility. Until the thief or the gunman reach to our door. Then we start to cry out, help, help, help. But we are not interested in helping to curb the problem. So we see and we don't see. We hear and we don't hear. And when the police cry out for assistance, we call them down and cuss them. We say we don't trust them, we don't this. All of those are just excuses. Because if we wanted information to get to the police, there are multiple ways we can get that information to the police. You don't trust the police, I'm sure you trust someone else. Come by me and my office and tell me. Go by the PS. Go by your preacher. Must be somebody in your life that you can say, listen, call the officer and let the officer know what happened. But we withdraw ourselves as if this is not our society and our country. And then because of the smallness of the country, we start to say, Lord, is my friend's son, you know. Lord, is my sister, little boy. And then we start to make excuses for the behavior. I saw something this morning. I'm going to mention it here because I like to take people at their word, but I saw something this morning that was sent to me of a young man, Mr. Howell, who is currently in prison. I believe he pled guilty to a charge of murder. And young Mr. Howell was giving a testimony. He says he has now given his life to the Lord. Praise be to God. And he was giving a testimony about how he got to this point. And one of the things he said, which I found was interesting, he said that at home with his parents, he was charming, gentle, but on the street, he was a different personality. The parents hold responsibility, but sometimes we all know that the parents are not always the ones who know. Because as this young man said, he was charming at home. A lot of times you hear parents say, "Not my son," because genuinely the children are chameleons. They're able to show one side here, a different side there. Some of these fellas who are so violent, and yet they have girlfriend and thing, and I say, well, how any girl could go with a man who killing people? But they may not be violent to their partner. People are complex beings. And that is why I'm saying we need an all-of-society approach, because if it is that the parent may not know, and I'm not absolving because some parents well know, but if it's that the parent does not know, then somebody who sees that youngster out in public. But we have lost a lot of that in our society. I remember being a youngster in sixth form, and when you were in sixth form in Nevis, you felt you were a big man, you know, because you done graduate high school, so you're big now. Some of us start to get a little beard and thing, and we figure we're big people. And I remember going home one afternoon, and my mother said to me, "What you were doing downtown in the middle of school hours?" I said, "What you doing?" Somebody done call home and say, "Miss Vicky, I see your son downtown." And she started to tell me, "Listen, I don't want you downtown in your uniform and thing loitering about town." Because at the time we felt we were big fellas, so there was a place they used to call Tops, I think. They used to have a pool table there, and we figured we're big, we're not going to class, we're going down to play pool. And my mother, people call her. Nowadays, if you call somebody mother, you know what they do? The mother cuss you. Or you don't mind your business, so you watch me picnic for. We need to get back our society. We need to get back our society. And that is not just the responsibility of a government. That's the responsibility of all of us. The church needs to do its part. The schools need to do their part. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet need to do their part. The Premier and the Cabinet need to do their part. The opposition also needs to do its part. And Tutmun, Saman Bagay, all of us need to do our part. And so, Ms. Hewlett, I extend my condolences. And I think just the way we fought COVID, and now I've asked us to fight dengue, we need to fight crime with an all-of-society approach. Are there any other questions for me?
Danella Thompson, Vaughan Radio. Good morning, Premier Brantley.
Good morning.
2 questions. One, can an update be provided on the expansion project currently at the Alexandra Hospital? And second question, Mr. Brantley, MSR Media has accused former Prime Minister Dr. Harris and former CIU head of financial fraud within the CBI program. Dr. Harris issued a statement refuting the matter, and your name has been implicated and CCD'd. Can we have a comment on the matter? Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the Alexandra Hospital, there's no change. We are, I believe, in the final stages now of the long-awaited quantity surveys on the interior. I think the year is closing. In fact, we're going to go into a new budget. The dates are fixed already in Nevis. We're going to have the budget reading on the 5th of December. And so I anticipate, Ms. Thompson, that in that budget we'll make provisions for 2024 for the completion of that project. We lost this year because of those difficulties that we have that I've spoken about time and time again here. We finally were able to get reputable persons to do the work for us that was asked to be done elsewhere and wasn't done. And we expect to have that in hand shortly. As soon as we have that, the contractors are already on alert, we're ready to go. So this budget will have a significant allocation for the hospital project. In fact, I can tell you that it will be the principal capital project for the government in the coming year. Insofar as MSR Media is concerned, my involvement with MSR Media is limited to the movie deal that we struck with them. I know Mr. Martinez, who's the head, and I have great respect for him. We have engaged in a professional way in relation to making movies in Nevis, and I can say publicly that he delivered on what he promised, and that the NIA had a partnership with MSR that yielded, I believe it was 9 movies in the space of about 2 years. Those movies did a number of things. It exposed our people to the movie industry. It got the world looking at Nevis as a possible destination. And I can tell you, as a consequence, we already have additional persons who want to do movies here. And we were only held up because of the actors' strike that was happening in the United States that I'm told has now come to an end. And so we anticipate in the new year to have additional movie productions being done right here in Nevis. This was, as you recall, one of our responses to COVID, where we reached out and MSR Media came, they embedded themselves here. Mr. Martinez and MSR at some point decided to branch over into St. Kitts and to get into other business. That is not anything to do with me or the NIA, because our business with Mr. Martinez and with MSR was exclusively about movies. On numerous occasions, MSR suggested that they wanted to do other projects on Nevis, hotel, studio, movie studio development, and we were supportive of those, but none of those came to fruition. I'm aware that MSR was actively courted by former Prime Minister Harris and his team. And I smiled because I said to myself that Prime Minister Harris has zero interest in movies or MSR. Prime Minister Harris looked across the Narrows and he saw Mark Brantley over here with some movie stars and said that we're making movies in Nevis. And he said, I don't want that in Nevis, I want it over in St. Kitts. And just like how they said they were going to have their own geothermal project to undermine the project in Nevis, just so they reached out and did everything that they could to woo MSR to St. Kitts. I looked on, I saw the play, I smiled. I smiled because I said, well, if that is what they want to do, then let them go ahead. So MSR ended up going to St. Kitts. Initially, they were getting involved with Kittish Hill. Then latterly, I think they ended up buying a hotel over there, OTI. And I wish them well. I have recently heard of this eruption of letters and accusations and counter-accusations between MSR and the previous Prime Minister. And all I will say on that, Ms. Thompson, is that as far as I know, all of them are grown, and they will sort it out. They will sort it out. I don't know why it is I'm being drawn into it, because it has nothing to do with me. I was not in the meetings and in the back rooms when the deals were being made. I was not privy to any of the discussions. I never went to any meetings where anything associated with citizenship by investment was being discussed. So all who have cocoa or sun must be concerned when rain come. I don't have any cocoa in the sun. Because my deal with MSR was about movie making in Nevis. And MSR made the movies that we agreed they would make. I don't know anything about CBI and what was promised and what was not promised and what was delivered and what was not delivered. So that will be a matter for MSR and Dr. Harris and Les Can and whoever else that find themselves now in some kind of confusion. I and my office are not involved in that. But I'll tell you this, that I've heard some suggestion that I am somehow the one pushing this, so I am involved somehow in this litigation and all of that. It is not so. I have nothing to do with it. If litigation is going to erupt, then that litigation will be based on whatever deals were made and whatever deals went wrong. I was not party to any deals. And you hear what I said, and I want this to be recorded. I was not privy to any discussion or be a part of any negotiation in any way, shape, or form in relation to whatever transpired between MSR and Dr. Harris and his government. I engaged with MSR at the NIA level to do some movies in Nevis. And that, I think, was a resounding success. Beyond that, I really don't have anything to say except that I, like the nation, I'm looking on. Because whatever arrangements were made, whatever deals were made, and whatever allegations are now being made, the best people to speak to that are the people who are in the room. And I wasn't there. So it will be for MSR and its people, and Mr. Harris and his people, to work out whatever it is. As I said, they're all grown, and I believe they will be all right. I am focused on Nevis, moving Nevis forward. I remain committed to a relationship with MSR to make movies. They had talked about building a studio. If they're still interested, I'm absolutely committed to that. I have nothing but good things to say about Mr. Martinez because, unlike a lot of others who come and promise and don't deliver, he said what he would do and he did what he said. But once he crossed the Narrows and went to Bastia, that was outside my jurisdiction. And I don't know about his dealings in St. Kitts. That never involved me or involved the NIA. So I want to make that very clear. I don't even know why my name is being included. I believe whatever they're doing doesn't involve me because, as I said, I wasn't privy to their discussions, their negotiations. I have never seen a letter that has come to say this or that. I supported MSR. I still support MSR in terms of what they were doing. And I supported the idea that you could use movies and get a financing through the CBI if that were possible. Definitely, because I saw what the movie industry could do, starting as it did right here in Nevis. I really anticipated that this thing could be developed. But you see, there were people who, as I said, were not interested in movies or in MSR. They were interested in taking it from Nevis. They didn't want to see it in Nevis. That's what they wanted, to take it from Nevis. And so they took it. Now they have it. Let them deal with it. Any other questions for me?
Okay, Hewlett, Department of Information. I've been tasked with asking some questions from our colleagues in St. Kitts who couldn't make it over today. Mr. Glenn Batt of SK Newsline asks, in reference to the talks that are to occur regarding the relations between St. Kitts and Nevis on the revenue sharing of CBI funds and other matters, can you provide an update on the progress being made, and what would be your expectations for the first quarter of 2024 on this matter? Secondly, he asks, as a former member of the Team Unity government, were issues relating to CBI responsible for the loss of the Six Senses Resort and Ritz-Carlton Hotel investments? Mr. German Abel asks, can you give an update on the upgrade of the Mondo track, and is the facility prepared for a possible influx of national track meets with imminent work on the Kim Collins Stadium in St. Kitts? And secondly, he asks, what role do you think the church and the religious community should play in the fight against the upsurge in criminal activity? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hewlett, and thank you to Mr. Bart and Mr. Abel. From which agency? Okay. Thank you very much for both. In terms of progress on revenue sharing, there's some ongoing dialogue between the Prime Minister and myself on this. I think we have made good progress thus far. We have not yet got to the point where we have formalized a formula. I'm not sure if that's proper language, but we have not yet formalized a formula. Yes, that's proper language. But I think that the Prime Minister thus far has been quite open, and a number of programs, for example, the CBI dividend, $1,000 that was announced during independence, the double salaries that have been funded through CBI have been extended to the island of Nevis. So our people are definitely getting now a fairer share, so to speak. Although my goal is to see this formalized, I think that we will work towards that. But certainly the dialogue right now is open, it's frank, it's honest, and we're looking at a number of areas. Just yesterday I had a meeting with revenue authorities from St. Kitts as we're looking to some headquartering. They're talking about a new approach to revenue collection, and we raised that we have to have a clear formula to deal with, for example, companies that are operating in Nevis but filing all their taxes in St. Kitts. You have some companies, for example, that are operating significant operations on Nevis, but because they're registered on St. Kitts and they're doing a single VAT filing on St. Kitts. So all the divisions that pay VAT to those companies, that VAT is accounted for in St. Kitts. You have companies that have branches on Nevis but are paying all their corporate taxes on St. Kitts. So these types of issues that we think can be resolved. The technical people are looking at those issues. So Mr. Bart is a question that he asks every time he comes. I will say that we are making progress. Issues of CBI in relation to Six Senses and Ritz-Carlton. I want the public to understand that CBI was a well-kept secret under the Team Unity administration. I listened bits and pieces of the former Prime Minister, Dr. Harris, having a press conference recently and pontificating about openness and calling on the new Prime Minister to make available statistics, how many passports he signed and all of this. And sometimes I wonder at the press, because I think the question that I was hoping somebody would ask is, when during your tenure did you make those statistics available? Now don't get me wrong, I agree that the statistics should be available. But sometimes we must reflect on that old adage that the devil can't correct sin. And too often, people who are in a position to make a difference did not themselves make that difference, but now criticize others. CBI was as opaque as one could imagine. And this is coming from somebody who was in the government. Not even those in the government knew what was happening in CBI. It was a closed shop. I'm telling you. The Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the Cabinet Secretary, and Les Can. If you don't believe me, try and go and ask John L. Powell what was happening in CBI. Ask Lindsey Grant. Ask Alexis Jeffers. Eric Evelyn. Because hard information was not even shared with the cabinet. So when the press is asking about Six Senses and Ritz-Carlton, don't ask me. When the next time Timothy Harris has a press conference, ask him why Six Senses run and gone and why Ritz-Carlton run and gone. Because Six Senses left here and ended up in Grenada. I'm told they're opening, I think, in January. Why they run and gone? Because I am standing here and I can't honestly answer that question. You would hear in the cabinet things like, oh, there are some issues that have arisen. We're trying to resolve these issues. What the issues are, what the resolution is, never comes. Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Harris is saying that the new Prime Minister should give numbers about number of passports and all of that. He did not even give those numbers to his cabinet. I remember an incident, you know. Sometimes I feel like I get in a little trouble for the things I say, but I remember an incident when we had introduced the Hurricane Relief Fund. You remember, after 2017? And there was a session, and Mr. Les Can was there. And during that session, one of the members of the cabinet, not me, one of the members, he asked the question, can you give an update as to how well the Hurricane Relief Fund has done? And Mr. Can's response was, it has done very well. So the person followed up and said, well, could we have some numbers? And Mr. Can said, I plead the fifth. That was his response. And the gentleman said, what do you mean? You're in the cabinet. What do you mean you plead the fifth? He said, I plead the fifth. And he said, only the Prime Minister could answer that. And the Prime Minister then said, well, it is doing better than we thought. The numbers are better than we thought they would be. Up to now, we don't know what the numbers are. So when you hear people with this hypocrisy, demanding transparency from others, people in the cabinet did not know what was happening with CBI. So, Mr. Bart, if you're listening, I beg you hard, the next time that there's a press conference, ask these questions to the appropriate authority, because I can't answer them. Mr. Abel, the Mondo track, we don't have any significant plans for upgrades, because I think you're talking about the stadium. Because as I said, our focus next year is going to be principally the hospital as a capital project. But we certainly have it on the cards, and we hope to be able to do it in this term. Church, religious community playing a role in crime fighting? Absolutely. I have said that we need an all-of-society approach, and we need all the members of the society to be involved and to do their part. So, I don't know if there are any other questions for me. No? Ms. Thompson, you're satisfied? All right. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Ms. Hewlett. She's a seasoned journalist, but Ms. Thompson, I don't know, seasoned journalist. I'll stick with that language. I want to thank NTV. I want to thank my good friend Carl in the back there, because he supplies all the graphics that we see here. And I want to thank Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson is our youngest journalist, but I think she's acquitted herself remarkably well. Ms. Thompson, congratulations. Thank you for being here with us for the whole year. And I've seen you grow from strength to strength. You usually ask me some difficult questions, so thank you very much. I want to thank my friends, of course, and St. Kitts, Mr. Bart, Mr. Abel. They come from time to time when they can, and even when they can't, they tend to send their questions. And so I thank all the members of the media for engaging with me and for affording me the privilege of engaging with them over the past year. I want to take this opportunity to wish each of you a wonderful Christmas season and a Happy New Year when it comes. And I hope that you'll tune into the budget when we'll set out the plans and programs for the government of Nevis. We'll do that on the 5th of December and the days following. Thank you very much, and I look forward to re-engaging with you in the coming year if God is so kind to us as to spare our lives and allow us the opportunity. Thank you, and God bless you, and have a wonderful Christmas. Whether you get the double or not, Miss Hewlett, have a wonderful Christmas. Go, because you're going to get 5% in January, I suggest you go and get a ham from the abattoir, the best quality ham that we have on offer in the Federation. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Double salary watch.